budget, which we ought to be looking at, which is the Department of Defense, the military, the 736 bases around the world.
And we're likely to hear more about the debt and deficit in one-minute speeches coming up next. And back to legislative business, the 2012 Defense Spending Bill Moore Amendment debate coming up next, live here on C-SPAN.
The prayer will be offered by our chaplain, Father Conway.
Let us pray. Loving God, we give you thanks for giving us another day. In these most important days and debates here in the People's House, we beg you to send your spirit of wisdom as the members struggle to do the work that has been entrusted to them. Inspire them to work together with charity and join their efforts to accomplish what our nation needs to live into a prosperous and secure future. In this week, in the wake of celebrating the great blessings bestowed upon our republic, please bless those men and women who serve our nation in uniform wherever they may be. Give them the protection of your loving embrace and grant them the trust to know they have our eternal gratitude. Please keep all the members of this Congress and all who work for the People's House in good health, that they might faithfully fulfill the great responsibility given them by the people of this great nation. Bless us this day and every day. May all that is done here this day be for your greater honor and glory. Amen.
The Chair has examined the journal of the last day's proceedings and announces to the House that his approval thereof. Pursuant to Clause 1 of Rule 1, the journal stands approved. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by the gentleman from California, Mr. Baca.
Before we begin the pledge to the flag, let's remember our men and women who are serving our country. As we can, put your hand over your heart, and let's begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Chair will entertain up to 15 requests for one-minute speeches on each side of the aisle. What purpose does the gentleman rise from Arkansas? Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize Daisy Outdoor Products, a Rogers, Arkansas company celebrating its 125th anniversary. Daisy moved to Rogers from Plymouth, Michigan in 1958. Since that move, Daisy's impact on the Northwest Arkansas economy has been substantial, not only in providing jobs, but the incredible recognition this famous brand brings to our region. As the world's oldest and largest BB gun manufacturer, Daisy has a storied history. Its contributions to the shooting sports, the United States military, and the character of young men and women nationwide is noteworthy. And who can forget Ralphie in the famous movie A Christmas Story and his coveted Red Ryder, the most famous BB gun ever produced? Mr. Speaker, 125 years in business is a significant milestone by any measurement. It's a tribute to the vision, commitment, and hard work of the company leadership and the employees of Daisy. Congratulations, Daisy. I'm proud of you, and our nation is proud of you. And I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Rhode Island rise?
I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to honor and recognize the rich history of Cape Verde as we mark Cape Verdean Independence Day. This week we honor the people of Cape Verde and those individuals of proud Cape Verdean descent here in America and around the world who are celebrating 35 years of independence. In doing so, we honor the many milestones and important Cape Verdean leaders like Amilcar Cabral, who fought for the liberation of Cape Verde. We also honor the lives, work, and rich history of Cape Verdean Americans throughout our country, and particularly in my home state of Rhode Island. Cape Verdeans have made significant contributions in the areas of art and culture, business, and public service. Cape Verdeans have brought JAG to local restaurants and added Zuka to the music enjoyed by our community. Rhode Islanders of Cape Verdean descent, like Speaker of the House Gordon Fox, have been prominent leaders in Rhode Island politics. I would also like to take a moment to pay tribute to the late George Lima. Mr. Lima served during World War II as a Tuskegee Airman, the first group of black fighter and bomber pilots in the history of what was then the Army Air Forces. He then served our state honorably as a state representative and as head of the Rhode Island NAACP. Cape Verdeans are generous, skilled, proud, caring members of our community, and I'm honored to celebrate Cape Verdean independence with them this week, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from South Carolina rise?
Mr. Speaker, I ask permission to address the House for 1 minute, revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, the President says he supports nuclear power development, but his actions have sadly stopped construction at Yucca Mountain after more than $10 billion of ratepayer money has already been invested, killing jobs in Nevada. Utility companies across the country have been mandated by the federal government to collect over $33 billion for the Nuclear Waste Fund to build Yucca Repository. The federal government promised citizens of South Carolina and Georgia that nuclear material being stored at the Savannah River site would be sent to Yucca for permanent disposal. Now this high-level waste will sit at SRS, and as reported by the Post and Courier at more than 106 other sites across the country. The Post and Courier has editorialized the President's position is breathtakingly irresponsible. I agree with Brian Tucker, President of the North Augusta Chamber of Commerce, that the administration should quit playing political games and follow through on promises to be guided by science and not by politics. In conclusion, God bless our troops, and we will never forget September 11th and the global war on terrorism.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Connecticut rise? Without objection, the gentleman recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When former President Harry Truman and his wife Bess were officially enrolled as the first Medicare beneficiaries on July 1, 1966, only 50% of America's seniors could afford private health insurance. The high risks associated with covering America's over 65 population made seniors basically uninsurable. That all changed 45 years ago last week when Medicare was established as a guaranteed benefit providing a basic level of care for seniors regardless of income or illness. From the beginning, Medicare has proven resilient, adapting to rapid changes in medicine and surviving in wartime and peace, economic boom times, and in recession. Despite some alarmist claims, Medicare has faced more difficult financial challenges in the past than the ones it faces today. Preserving Medicare's guaranteed benefit for future generations is our solemn duty, and we must stop the push for vouchers which will ruin America's middle class. On the 45th anniversary of this landmark program, we must rededicate ourselves to protecting Medicare as a guaranteed benefit for today's and tomorrow's seniors, not butchering it with a voucher program or using it as an ATM for the top 2%. Happy birthday, Medicare. If we stay true to our values, you'll have many happy returns.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Ohio rise?
Mr. Speaker, request unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute, revise and extend.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, the administration's war on coal led the Office of Surface Mining and Reclamation to try and change a rule that would redefine what is considered a stream as it pertains to mining operations. I'm pleased that an amendment I offered during the debate over the budget continuing resolution has been included in the Interior Appropriations Bill in an effort to stop this irresponsible regulatory overreach. No one is surprised that the Obama administration is continuing the war on coal, but this is also a war on jobs. And the coal industry employs thousands of people in eastern and southeastern Ohio. Mr. Speaker, we all want a cleaner environment, but we need to make sure that the policies being enacted are common sense and do not come at the expense of jobs in our economy. Stopping the Obama administration from rewriting the stream buffer zone rule will be a victory for jobs and a defeat to a radical agenda that is seeking to outlaw coal entirely. We can and we must enact smart policies that clean up our environment while protecting American jobs. And I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from California rise?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, as the deadline nears for America to raise its debt limit, the American people have sent a clear message to all of us. They will not stand for a budget that is balanced on the backs of seniors and the middle class. The American people know that it is wrong to privatize Medicare with a new voucher program, cut guarantee health benefits for seniors, sacrifice Medicare aid services for the poor and disabled. It is not too late for us to compromise on a balanced approach. Yes, we can trim spending with intelligent cuts, but we must end tax breaks for the ultra-rich. I state we must end tax break for the ultra-rich and corporations that ship jobs overseas. No new taxes equals no new jobs. No taxes, no jobs. We must have a historic opportunity in front of us. Let us stop the bickering and work together on a plan that straightens the middle class, lowers our deficit, creates new jobs here at home. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Georgia rise?
Ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objections, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, we have overspent, we are overextended, and now we have to get out of debt. For the last 20 years, we have been increasing the debt ceiling and allowing Washington to spend more and more of the taxpayers' money. This method of madness hasn't worked, and today our economy is suffering because of it. Yesterday, I introduced a unique bill that would lower the debt ceiling to $13 trillion. This proposal would force Washington to make the spending cuts that we so desperately need to pay down the debt. State and local governments, businesses, and families understand that when you've maxed out your credit card, you can't just give yourself a credit increase. Instead, you have to cut spending and pay down your bills. The federal government is the only entity that does not understand this. Mr. Speaker, I urge my colleagues to support H.R. 2409, the Debt Ceiling Reduction Act, because we need to turn this country in a completely different direction. I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Michigan rise? Without objections, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a proposal to help us save tax dollars, pay down our debt, and better protect the American people. Instead of spending billions and billions of dollars to secure Afghanistan at the rate that we are, and we spent over $500 billion in Afghanistan of our precious tax dollars over the last 10 years, I propose to redirect a small share of our tax dollars back to the U.S. and to use our money to hire and equip more police officers, more firefighters, more emergency medical providers. Because one of the most effective ways to help protect the American people from a terrorist attack is to make Americans safer right here at home. I yield back my time.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Tennessee rise? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On June 22nd, President Obama released 30 million barrels of oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, just over a day's worth of oil. The administration continues to play politics rather than develop a comprehensive national energy plan which will lay the path for future economic growth, help lower unemployment, and improve our stagnant economy. This country's economy was built on inexpensive and abundant energy. Folks are frustrated now. A fellow stopped me the other day and said, "Doc, it's a sad day when a guy can't buy a gallon of gas and a gallon of milk for $10. And it's true. People don't want half measures that don't address their problems. They want solutions. They want to work. They want to provide for their families. And it's way past time to ease this pain at the pump. The President's shown no interest in Republicans' all-of-the-above energy strategies that encourage oil and natural gas development in places like Anwar and the Outer Continental Shelf. With national unemployment stuck stubbornly above 9%, the American people expect us to work together to lower the cost of energy, reduce our dependence on foreign oil, and create American jobs. With that, I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from New Jersey rise? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to oppose the privatization of Amtrak. Privatization of Amtrak will threaten reliable, dependable, and accessible passenger rail service throughout the United States. I travel home every weekend to my district in New Jersey on Amtrak, and Amtrak service is an essential part of our region's economic vitality. Under the plan to privatize Amtrak, the essential service they provide to millions of passengers could be lost, and nearly 20,000 Amtrak jobs could be eliminated. State-owned infrastructure that Amtrak currently maintains could be turned over to the already deficit-burdened states to maintain. It is likely that station stops will be cut and commuter rail services will bear increased cost. Additionally, freight railroads that currently use Amtrak-supported lines may face logistical problems if Amtrak becomes privatized. Under the proposal to privatize Amtrak, many important labor provisions will be eliminated. Future railroad employees will be exempt from disability, pension, retirement, and unemployment benefits. By removing future employees from these benefit systems, current retired employees will be negatively impacted, and railroads will face increased taxes to maintain solvency of these agencies. I urge my colleagues to oppose privatization of Amtrak.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose the gentleman from Maryland rise? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, while marching in parades and town festivals all over my district during the 4th of July weekend, I spoke with concerned parents, job creators, seniors, and folks that have been out of a job for a long time. One message I heard loud and clear from all of them: reduce government spending so that businesses can create jobs again. That's why I signed on to the Cut, Cap, and Balance Pledge, which calls for a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution. I know the idea that the government should have to actually balance its budget every year is strange to some here in Washington, especially entrenched bureaucrats and the special interest groups that fill this city. Imagine if the federal government had to run a budget like we do in our homes. It's time for the federal government to live within its means, and it's time for us to reduce spending so that businesses will have the confidence to create jobs again. Cut, cap, and balance. Let's make sure we put America back on the path to prosperity, not unemployment and bankruptcy. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentlelady from Hawaii rise? Without objection, the gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, for so long we've been hearing about our debt. We've also been hearing about who owns our debt. And of course, the name China comes up. That is why we need to have the Currency Reform for Fair Trade Act come to this floor, because that is the only way we're going to address the currency manipulation by China and simply ask that they play by fair rules for fair trade. Look at what this means for us. Let's understand that by not having the currency stop being manipulated by them, they are having the benefit of 25 to 30%. That's what we're subsidizing them in terms of their exports. If we get the currency manipulation under control, this is what we could hope to accomplish. The budget deficit will reduce to about $857 million over the next 10 years. The trade deficit will reduce by $138 billion. The GDP over the next 18 months will increase by $285 billion. This will support 1.6 million American jobs. So as we are asking, where are the jobs? Look to currency
time has expired.
manipulation.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas rise? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, on July 4th, we celebrated our political independence from Great Britain. My constituents want to know, when are we going to celebrate our financial independence from China, who funds much of our national debt? And my constituents also wanted to know, where are the jobs? Mr. Speaker, these two are connected, because too much spending-driven debt leads to too few jobs. Now, our president doesn't seem to get this. If his stimulus, his reckless spending, his small business tax increases, his class warfare rhetoric, if that helped promote job creation, we would be the most highly employed society in the history of mankind. But instead, we are mired in the longest period of sustained high unemployment under his policies since the Great Depression. House Republicans have a plan for America's job creators. End the trillion-dollar deficits. Make the tax code fairer, flatter, simpler. Stop the president's job-crushing tax increases and end the dumb regulations that prevent jobs in America.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Vermont rise? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you. Congress has a responsibility to level with the American people. We face a looming decision about extending the debt limit, not because we want to, but because we have to reaffirm the obligation we have to pay our bills. The majority of us on the Democratic side voted to do that. That was not to incur new spending or new obligations. It was to meet obligations already incurred, $2.3 trillion for the Bush tax cuts, an Iraq war, $1 trillion on the credit card, Afghanistan on the credit card. If we're going to level with the American people, we have to acknowledge that we have to pay for things, whatever their intentions. The time is long overdue for us to accomplish this. If we're going to be successful, on the two things we must do, pay our bills, maintain our full faith and credit, and have a long-term fiscal plan, then everything must be on the table, and that has to include taxes as well as spending, and it must include the Pentagon. Mr. Speaker, this is not an ideological battle to win. It's a practical problem to be solved. I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Illinois rise? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There's no doubt that our economy is struggling. With stagnant unemployment, over $14 trillion in debt, and soaring food and gas prices, America does face some challenging decisions. In my home state of Illinois, the debt per person is over $4,400, and the state faces a $15 billion shortfall in next year's budget. These indeed are real problems that need to be addressed with common-sense solutions. One solution is to encourage American companies to reinvest their earnings here at home. Currently, companies are holding an estimated $1.4 trillion in earnings overseas because the United States tax code encourages companies to keep their earnings outside of the country. We must encourage companies to reinvest their earnings here in America. Not only would these earnings stimulate the American economy, but the government would collect approximately $50 billion in immediate tax revenue. This money would help spur job creation, more growth, and investments here at home. I would encourage my colleagues to join me in supporting the bipartisan H.R. 1834, the Freedom to Invest Act, so that we can strengthen our economy with common-sense solutions.
Expired. For what purpose does the gentlelady from Texas rise?
For 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to say today that I was elected in November last year for the 10th time here, and I'm in my 4th district in that period of time. And I spoke to people all over Dallas County, Tarrant County, and Collin County. And unanimously, they're concerned about the lack of serious concerns about the lack of true job plan from the Republican majority. So we must cut spending. We must ensure long-term fiscal health, but gridlock over spending cuts does not create jobs. We need a bipartisan compromise that focuses on fiscal responsibility while maintaining investments in our community that continue to create jobs and grow the economy. To get Americans back to work, we must invest in science, education, research, and innovation to create the jobs of the future. And we must focus on America's ability to build, construct, and grow manufacturing across the country to remain globally competitive. Mr. Speaker, these efforts can and will spur job growth and ensure that our nation can compete and be a leader in the global economy. Thank you. I yield back.
Time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Kansas rise? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I rise today with grave concern over our country's economy and fiscal condition. For too long, Washington has borrowed money to finance government, and today our nation's leaders continue to meet to discuss this looming crisis. We all know that this crisis is spending-driven. It's not that government taxes too little, it's that government spends too much. Mr. Speaker, the American people know that the policies of tax, borrow, and spend will not lead us to prosperity as a nation. Taking more money from hardworking Americans and sending it to Washington is not the answer. Rather, it's time for Washington to roll up its sleeves, get to work, and live within its means, just like families and small businesses have to do all across this country. It's time to enact significant spending cuts, put in place caps on future spending, and pass a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, if we are to rebuild our nation's economy and put Americans back to work, we must put our own fiscal house in order first. Now yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose the gentleman from Ohio rise?
Good afternoon, Mr. Speaker. I request permission to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In a short time, the House will have an opportunity to reclaim our constitutional authority on matters of war and peace by voting to stop the use of funds for the war in Libya. An agreement has been reached through work that Mr. Amash and I have done to create a bipartisan amendment which states none of the funds made available by this act may be used for the use of military force against Libya. The Amash-Kucinich amendment is co-sponsored by a growing group of bipartisan activists, including Representatives Ron Paul, Lynn Woolsey, Walter Jones, John Conyers, Dan Burton, Barbara Lee, Ted Poe, and Pete Stark. This could well be an historic moment where a bipartisan coalition rallies this Congress to defend the Constitution and to reset the balance that has been upset by the administrations claiming the war power. Vote to end the war in Libya. Support the bipartisan Amash-Kucinich amendment.
Expired. For what purpose does the gentlelady from North Carolina rise?
Permission to address the House for 1 minute, Mr. Speaker. Revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The #1 job for House Republicans is job growth. The #1 impediment to job growth is uncertainty. Uncertainty caused by a record-high debt, $14.3 trillion and growing, and the record-high taxes that are going to have to pay for it. Uncertainty about the largest tax increase in the history of the nation that the President pledges to support in just 19 months. Add to that the unknown cost of the government takeover of health care and the unknown price of Dodd-Frank, and you've got a very uncertain private sector. We cannot help the job seeker by punishing the job creator. They need us to work with them, not against them. If we follow the House Republican plan for America's job creators and stop spending money we don't have, certainty will be restored, our economy will grow, and jobs will be created. I yield back, Mr. Speaker.
Gentlelady's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Georgia rise? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, with a heavy heart, I turn our attention to the plight of Sudan's Nuba people who are fleeing their homes in the tens of thousands as the Sudanese armed forces conduct brutal military assault on their homeland. There are widespread reports that Sudanese forces are bombing, shelling, and executing civilians in the oil-rich state of South Kordofan. The Sudanese government has barred NGOs and the press and is restricting the movement of UN personnel in the area. Mr. Speaker, as we welcome South Sudan into the community of nations this week, United Nations personnel must investigate reports of possible war crimes against the Nuba people by the Sudanese forces. We must not be intimidated by Omar al-Bashir's bullying, or we may find ourselves saying, never again, again. I yield back the balance of my time.
Time has expired. For what purpose does the gentlelady from California rise? Without objection, the gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to honor the life of Greg Cooper. Mr. Cooper recently lost his battle with cancer on May 26th of this year. He was a proud United States Marine, and he served his country there between 1963 and 1967, and he did a tour in the Vietnam War. Upon leaving the Marines, Greg was hired by the Santa Ana Police Department, where he held several very high-profile jobs and worked within the tactical units that we have. While serving his community as a Santa Ana police chief, he earned a bachelor's degree from California State University at Fullerton and a master's degree from the University of Southern California. Leaving Santa Ana in 1992, he was appointed chief of police in Sanger, California. And in 1996, he relocated here to Washington, D.C., where he accepted a position with the Department of Justice to administer our COPS grant program. In 2002, Greg joined the Department of Homeland Security as FEMA's Chief Security Officer, and he retired in 2008. Mr. Speaker, this nation and my community mourns the loss of a loyal friend, a respected leader, and a dedicated public servant. And I yield back.
Gentleman, please time. Purpose, Tennessee, rise.
Thank you, sir. Address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. While we were in recess on June the 25th, Memphis lost one of its great citizens, Bishop J.O. Patterson, Jr. Bishop Patterson was the grandson of the founder of the Church of God in Christ, Bishop Charles Mason, and the cousin of the revered and late Bishop G. Patterson, who was the 6th bishop of the Kojic. Bishop J.O. Patterson, Jr. was a public servant as well as a bishop and a revered citizen of Memphis. He was my friend. We served together in the Constitutional Convention of 1977. He served 1 term in the House, 2 terms in the State Senate, 20 years in the City Council, and was the first appointed mayor, African-American mayor of the city of Memphis. He was a leader in his church, and he cared about his community, he cared about jazz, he cared about his fellow man. He was low-key, sincere, down-to-earth, and a leader who Memphis will miss. He did much with the opportunities that he was given through his father and his family and his city in politics and in other areas. He was the jurisdictional bishop for the Tennessee headquarters, the head of the Pentecostal Temple Institutional Church of God in Christ, and did much with Kojic. I will miss him, and so will the city of Memphis and all the members and all the saints. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentlelady rise?
Mr. Speaker, I present a privileged report for printing under the rule.
The clerk will report the title.
Report to accompany H.R. 2434, a bill making appropriations for financial services and general government for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2012, and for other purposes.
This is referred to the Union calendar and ordered printed pursuant to Clause 1 of Rule 21. All points of order are reserved. What purpose does the gentleman from Florida rise?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material on H.R. 2219.
Objection. Pursuant to House Resolution 320 and Rule 18, the Chair declares the House and the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union for further consideration of H.R. 2219. Will the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Westmoreland, kindly resume the chair?
The House is in the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union for further consideration of H.R. 2219, which the clerk will report by title.
A bill making appropriations for the Department of Defense for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2012, and for other purposes.
When the Committee of the Whole rose on Wednesday, July the 6th, 2011, the bill had been read to page 161, line 12. For what purpose does the gentleman from Oklahoma rise?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk designated in the congressional record as Amendment Number 13.
Report to amendment. Clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment Number 13, printed in the congressional record, offered by Mr.
Chairman,
Cole
I
of
ask
Oklahoma.
unanimous consent that the reading of the amendment be dispensed with.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, this amendment is quite simple. It prohibits the funding of prohibits any funds in this bill from being used to conduct military operations in Libya, a place where I believe we are engaged in an illegal and certainly unauthorized conflict. Mr. Chairman, I feel a little bit today like a lawyer with two very unpopular clients. One of them is Libya, and the other one is the United States Congress. But in this case, each one of them has an important point to make. With respect to Libya, let me make it clear, I don't believe anybody in this chamber supports Mr. Gaddafi, supports that regime, or wishes it well in any way. But Libya did not attack the United States of America. Libya did not attack any member of NATO. Libya has not allowed al-Qaeda to operate with impunity out of its territory. A number of years ago, Libya turned over nuclear material to the United States. Quite simply, however much we detest Mr. Gaddafi and his regime, we have no reason to be at war or conducting military operations in Libya. And frankly, if we allow that situation to continue, I think we have to ask ourselves, are we willing to attack any nation, any time that we disagree with a regime that we don't like, simply because the President chooses to do so? More troubling than the attack on Libya, in my view, is the circumvention of this body, the United States Congress, and its war-making authority under both the Constitution and the War Powers Act. Only Congress has the ability to authorize and fund military operations. The administration consulted with NATO, the administration consulted with the United Nations, the administration consulted with the Arab League. It never, in any real sense, consulted with the Congress of the United States before beginning military operations in Libya. 2 weeks ago, this House made clear its opposition to the Libyan venture by refusing to authorize even the limited use of force. We should build on that by removing funding today. Some may question whether or not this amendment is germane on this particular piece of legislation. Frankly, Mr. Chairman, I worked very carefully with the parliamentarian on the language, and more importantly, it's moderned after the famous Boland Amendment of 1983 to the Defense Approach Bill that year that was approved by this body 411-0. Some may argue, like the administration, that we really aren't engaged in hostilities in Libya. That's simply laughable. Attorneys at both the Department of Defense and the Department of Justice of this administration believe that our activity requires congressional authorization under the War Powers Act. We've flown over 1,000 combat sorties over Libyan airspace. We've launched 228 Tomahawk missiles. We've launched over 100 Predators. We're refueling and supporting NATO aircraft that are engaged in attacking Libya every single day. If that's not war on our side of this situation, I can assure you the people on the other side consider it war and certainly consider it hostile. The reality is we should not be engaged in military action of this level unless it's authorized and funded by the Congress of the United States. In Libya, the President has quite simply overreached. However, in Congress, we have so far allowed him to do so. We've not authorized this activity. There's not a single line in the Defense Authorization Bill or in this bill which actually funds this activity, and we ought to explicitly prohibit the President from concluding. I think, like many in this body, this is a very important moment for the Congress of the United States. Whether or not we claim war-making authority and exercise our power under the Constitution is really the issue here. You could be for the Libyan venture and still be able to support this legislation, or you could be against it. At the end of the day, it's extraordinarily important that we stop the erosion of the war-making authority and responsibility of the Congress of the United States, that we end this ill-advised adventure in Libya, and that we reassert the rightful place of this institution in conducting war, authorizing it, and funding it. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back my time.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose, the gentleman from Washington rise?
Mr. Chairman, I rise in opposition today to the gentleman's amendment.
Gentleman's recognized for 5 minutes.
And before I start on my discussion, I want to say that I have great respect for Congressman Cole, who serves on the Defense Appropriations Subcommittee. He's one of our most thoughtful members. The NATO-led mission to defeat Gaddafi and protect the people of Libya was undertaken in concert with a broad coalition of nations, including the Arab League, and it followed a resolution adopted in the United Nations Security Council authorizing all necessary measures. This amendment would end our involvement unilaterally. I believe this could materially harm our relationship with NATO, who is also playing a major role in this. We will undoubtedly require support in the future in our dealings with NATO, and we get support in Afghanistan today. I do support a wider debate and greater oversight of the use and the cost of U.S. military forces engaged in the Libya operation, both in the Defense and Foreign Affairs Committee as well as here on the House floor. We should let the mission with our NATO allies continue so we can overthrow Gaddafi and protect the Libyan people. I urge all my colleagues to vote no on this amendment.
Gentleman yields back. What purpose gentleman from Indiana rise? Okay. 5 minutes.
The Constitution, Mr. Chairman, and the War Powers Act clearly say what the parameters are within which the President must act or follow. Number one, a declaration of war. Number two, a specific authorization. Number three, a national emergency created by an attack upon the United States, its territories or possessions or its armed forces. None of this criterion was met by the President. He said he went in there because of humanitarian issues. He consulted, as we've said before on the floor, with France, England, the United Nations, NATO, and the Arab League. He had 2 or 3 weeks to do that, but he didn't have time to talk to the Congress of the United States, and he's gone in there and spent almost $1 billion at a time when we just don't have the money. Now, if you're talking about humanitarian problems, in the Sudan, 2,300 Sudanese have been killed this year alone, and more than 500 people died in the last 2 weeks. In Darfur, 450,000 to 480,000 have been displaced or killed. And just recently, and one of my colleagues talked about this a while ago, in the Nubian Mountains in the Sudan, they're killing people every single day. It's a horrible atrocities that are taking place, human rights violations. And if you're talking about humanitarian issues, why wouldn't you go in there as well? You look also at Syria right now. In Syria, there have been an awful lot of people killed. We all see that on television every night. There are wars of opportunity. If you go to Liberia, if you go and look back at the Khmer Rouge, we didn't get into those wars, and we're not getting into these wars right now because it's not in our national interest and it's not a threat to the United States. And the President has taken us into a conflict. He said it's not a war, but it is a war. We've sent about 230 missiles in there at $1.1 million per to kill people. We've flown sortie after sortie over there dropping bombs on people, and the President says it's not a war. It is a war. It's the United States war, and it's being covered by NATO. Now, we shouldn't be going to war unless this body and the other body says it's okay. It's in the Constitution. It's in the War Powers Act. We should not be there. Nobody likes Muammar Gaddafi. Nobody thinks he should be there. But we can't be going into wars of opportunity every place, especially at a time when we're fiscally broke. I think it's extremely important that legislation like that, which Mr. Cole just offered, should be passed, and I hope we will pass. There's a whole host of these amendments that are going to be read today and we're going to be voting on. And we need to send a very clear signal to the White House that this must never happen again. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Who seeks recognition? Is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Oklahoma. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. Is agreed to.
On that, I
What
request.
purpose, gentleman from Washington Rise?
On that, I request a recorded vote.
Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 16, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Oklahoma will be postponed. For what purpose does the gentleman from Michigan rise?
Mr. Chair, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk designate the amendment. Which would you gentlemen
It's
specify?
Amash 27.
Designate the amendment.
Amendment offered by Mr. Amash of Michigan. At the end of the bill, before the short title, insert the following. Section, none of the funds made available by this act may be used for the use of military force against Libya.
Gentleman's recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I'd like to thank the distinguished gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Kucinich, for his tremendous leadership on this issue. There is growing bipartisan support for this amendment. It's an amendment that gives us the opportunity to stop this unconstitutional war in Libya. The United States has been at war against Libya for nearly 4 months. We have dropped bombs on Libyan buildings. We have flown sorties over Libyan airspace. It has been reported that we've even targeted Gaddafi himself. We are at war. The Constitution vests Congress with the exclusive power to declare war. The President has not attempted to obtain Congress's authorization for the war, and yet at this moment, as we debate on the House floor, the war continues. Instead of following the Constitution and seeking authorization, the President made strained arguments to justify the continued operation. At first, the operation was supposed to be limited, as though that undefined term serves as a constitutional escape clause. My constituents certainly would be surprised if Congress established a limited religion, or subjected them to limited cruel and unusual punishment, or quartered soldiers in their houses, but only for a limited time. After that limited argument ran its course, the President turned to a UN Security Council resolution and an invitation from an organization of Arab states to justify our involvement. Those organizations were not around at the time the Constitution was written, much less are they listed in its text. The administration now has retreated from its constitutional arguments in public and claims that, at least, the War Powers Resolution does not forbid the strikes because we're not involved in, quote, hostilities against Libya. Imagine that the shoe were on the other foot, that Libya was bombing us. Would we view the Libyan Air Force's bombing of our infrastructure as a hostile act? Of course we would. Last week, a member of the other chamber called the President's arguments, quote, cute. I would use a different term, embarrassing. It's embarrassing that the administration attempts to hide behind these transparently strained and flimsy arguments, especially when we're dealing with such a grave issue. But you know what would be more embarrassing? If this Congress did nothing. More embarrassing than the President's contortions of the law and disregard for the Constitution would be if Congress, with full knowledge that it was occurring, gave him a pass. In the face of an attack on the Constitution, in the face of an attack on this institutions and our powers as a co-equal branch, we must stand up and say stop. And if we don't, we should be the ones who are embarrassed. The Amash-Kucinich Amendment prohibits funds from being used for military force against Libya. To be clear, I believe that Congress doesn't need to do anything to stop the President from ordering force against Libya, because the President has not received authorization. The use of force is already illegal. However, to reinforce our constitutional position, our amendment says that beginning at the start of the fiscal year, on October 1, the armed forces may not drop bombs on Libya or otherwise use military force. Unlike the bill we considered the week before last, our amendment does not implicitly authorize any actions against Libya. It simply says force may not be used because the President has not sought, nor has he received authorization for force. Please vote yes on the Amash-Kucinich Amendment and defend our constitutional role in war powers. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose, gentleman of Ohio rise?
Move to strike the last word.
Gentleman from Florida rise.
Mr. Chairman, I rise in opposition to the amendment.
Chairman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, if this were a debate on policy or a debate on philosophy or a debate on the War Powers Act specifically, the position that I would take would be somewhat different than I must take today. But as the manager of this bill, what I have to work with is the bill before the House and the amendment before the House. And the amendment is simple. None of the funds made available by this act may be used for the use of military force against Libya. Well, what I would say to the Chair, there are no funds in this bill, in this act, for Libya. I was curious about that, and as Chairman preparing to write this bill in conjunction with Mr. Dix, the ranking member, I wrote to the President on April the 1st, and I sent each of our members a copy later on, asking the President for specific questions about the scope of this activity, the expected cost, etc. On June the 22nd, the White House finally responded, and they said that they will not plan to ask for a supplemental appropriations bill. And there's no money in this bill for Libya. The administration says they will not ask for a supplemental bill to pay for Libya, that they will use funds in the base budget. And I wonder where they're going to take the money out of the base budget. Now, as chairman of the subcommittee, this worries me. Where do they plan to take the money? That's only part of the argument. There is no money in this act for Libya to start with. But secondly, if this amendment should become effective, here's what we would not be able to do. We would not be able to fly or perform search and rescue missions of American forces who may be flying aerial activity and have the planes go down. Like early in the operation, we lost an F-15. 2 American pilots went into Libya and safely rescued the pilot of that F-15. You couldn't do that under this amendment. What we're providing today is surveillance, intelligence, and reconnaissance. Couldn't do that under this amendment. Aerial refueling, our coalition partners, and they are partners, and we have agreements with those partners. We provide aerial refueling because most of them do not have the capacity to refuel their aircraft in air. We would not be able to provide aerial refueling. We couldn't even provide operational planning, sitting down and talking with our coalition partners about the plan for Libya. So while this amendment sounds good if we were discussing philosophy and if we were determining the policy's already been established, and this amendment does not change the policy. It affects something in the bill that's not even in the bill. So there are no funds in this bill for Libya, and according to the letter from the White House, they will not ask for any supplemental funds. They will just pay for the operation out of existing funds. That remains a good question, and I say that again. I'm really curious to know what base funds do they intend to use to pay for this operation in Libya. I don't have the answer today. I'm hoping that one day I may have that answer. I yield back my time.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Ohio rise?
I rise to strike the last word in support of the Amash Kucinich amendment.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
The esteemed chair, my good friend, of the Defense Appropriations raises a question. Where are they getting the money? The money is not, as he points out, expressly in the bill. Well, this legislation, the Amash-Kucinich Amendment, isn't to delete funds that have already been appropriated. This is to forbid the administration from using funds that are appropriated in this act. Now, there's no way that Congress could or would intervene to stop a search and rescue mission, and that's not relevant unless you're talking about that this Congress is finally going to search this defense budget, figure out where the President is getting the money, and rescue the American taxpayers from a wasteful war and rescue the Constitution from an illegal war. That is what makes this a search and rescue mission. But no search and rescue is prohibited by the Amash-Kucinich Amendment. Now, I want to say that I'm proud to have worked with Mr. Amash to come together with this bipartisan agreement, and the support for it's growing. We have Mr. Paul, Ms. Woolsey, Mr. Jones, Mr. Conyers, Mr. Burton, Ms. Barbara Lee, Mr. Poe, Mr. Stark, Mr. McClintock, Mr. Nadler, Mr. Nugent, Mr. Johnson, Mr. Honda. The support is growing, and members can call either Mr. Amash's office or my office right now if they want to co-sponsor. This is our moment in Congress. This is our moment to reclaim the Constitution of the United States, which the Founders envisioned, that under Article I, Section 8, we have the power to determine whether or not this nation goes to war, not some rebel group in Benghazi, because when you reduce it to its ultimate, a group of Benghazi rebels made the decision to go to war against its own government, and before you know it, NATO joins in, we're pulled into it. The administration went to everyone except getting the approval of the United States Congress. This is our moment to reclaim the Constitution. Will we rise to the occasion? This isn't only about this Congress right now. History will judge us whether or not we understood the imperative of Article I, Section 8. This is about the Constitution. Certainly it's about $1 billion that would be spent by September unless we intervene. At a time of rising debt, at a time of tremendous pressure in the budget, at a time when local governments in our communities are cutting public services because they don't have the money, this administration determines they're going to keep us in the war, and they didn't even so much as give this Congress an opportunity to have this debate before the decision was made. That was wrong. And I appreciate that we've been able to set aside any partisan disagreements that are part of the nature of this forum, to understand that we have a higher calling here. And that higher calling is to defend this Constitution of the United States, which describes what our duties are. When we come here, we take the oath to defend the Constitution. That's what we shall do today. We shall rescue this Congress from the ignominy of having the rights that the people expect us to exercise in their behalf just trampled by an administration that doesn't think that we have any co-equal role in the government at all. This is our moment to stand up. Democrats and Republicans alike, I'm proud to work with Mr. Amash in crafting this bipartisan Kucinich-Amash amendment. This is our moment, members. Let's not lose this opportunity to stand up and speak out on behalf of the United States Constitution, on behalf of the separation of powers, on behalf of the co-equality of our House of Representatives and the Congress of the United States. Let's show the Founders, and the spirit of the Founders is always with us in this place. Let's demonstrate that we remember where we came from when this Constitution was set forth. Let's demonstrate that we have reached our moment where we stand up. Thank you. Yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California rise?
Mr. Speaker, I move to strike the last word.
Gentleman's recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, for more than 3 months now,
our nation has been amidst a quiet constitutional crisis that carries immense implications. My friend, the gentleman from Florida, is sadly mistaken to dismiss this as a meaningless philosophical discussion. This strikes at the very heart of our constitutional form of government. On March 19th, completely without congressional authorization, the President ordered an unprovoked attack against another country. In so doing, he crossed a very bright constitutional line placed there specifically to prevent so momentous and fatal a question as war from being made by a single individual. The American founders were explicit on this point. For centuries, European monarchs had plunged their nations into bloody and debilitating wars on whim, and the founders wanted to protect the American Republic from that fate. James Madison explained why in this passage in a letter to Hamilton. He said, "In no part of the Constitution is more wisdom to be found than in the clause which confines the question of war or peace to the legislature and not to the executive department. The trust and the temptation would be too great for any one man. War is, in fact, the true nurse of executive aggrandizement. In a war, a physical force is to be created, and it is the executive will which is to direct it. In war, the public treasures are to be unlocked, and it is the executive hand which is to dispense them. In war, the honors and emoluments of office are to be multiplied, and it is the executive patronage under which they are to be enjoyed. Those who are to conduct a war cannot, in the nature of things, be proper or safe judges whether a war ought to be commenced, continued, or concluded," unquote. The President has tried to justify this act in a variety of ways, that bombing in other countries is not really an act of war, that there wasn't time to consult Congress, though more than enough to consult the United Nations Security Council, or that it was a humanitarian act. Well, Mr. Speaker, never was there a greater provocation or clearer moral justification for war than the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. And never was there a more activist president than Franklin Roosevelt. Yet within 24 hours of that attack, President Roosevelt appeared before a joint session of Congress in this very hall. He clearly recognized that as Commander-in-Chief, his authority only extended to ordering, quote, that all measures be taken for our defense. He recognized that under the Constitution, anything more, even in this most historic attack, required an act of Congress, which he sought and obtained. The unprovoked attack on Libya was not authorized by this Congress, and it's accordingly unconstitutional and illegal. Indeed, 2 weeks ago, the House considered a resolution authorizing a war with Libya, and it rejected that measure by nearly a 3-to-1 margin. It then considered a second measure to authorize acts of war against Libya just short of actual combat, including refueling tankers on their way to targets, the identification and selection of targets, operational support, operational planning. It rejected that measure as well. The precedent being established right now by the President's deliberate defiance of the Constitution and the clear will of the Congress has profound implications for our nation's future. If this act is allowed to stand unchallenged, it means that the checks and balances painstakingly built into the Constitution on the supreme question of war and peace have been rendered meaningless. Weeks ago, the House voted to deny authorization for the use of funds for the war on Libya effective October the 1st. This amendment simply follows through on that decision in the actual Appropriations Act. Frankly, we need to do much more than this. Clearly, one of the conditions for increasing the debt limit must be to assure that no funds, either borrowed or raised, should be used to continue to support this illegal act. And we need to remember that a war once started cannot always be turned off by an Appropriations Act. Once we've attacked another country without provocation, we have created an aggrieved belligerent that now has cause to pursue that war regardless of what the Congress later decides. That's why this President is so dangerous. That's why the President's actions are so devastating to our very form of government, and that's why we need to speak clearly and unequivocally through measures like that offered by the gentleman from Michigan and Ohio today. With that, I yield back.
Yields back. For what purpose does the